Good afternoon, great to have you with us. Lots to talk about today from the major defence announcement from the government, the foreign policy agenda of the Labor Party. I'll be joined by Penny Wong shortly. First, though, let's bring in our political editor, Andrew Clennell. Andrew, defence, but still floods very much front and centre, and whether or not the government's got the balance right on where the additional funds are going right now.
That's right, Kieran. Well, Scott Morrison with a big defence announcement this morning, which we'll get to in a minute. But first, controversy over the federal government's flood assistance announcement in New South Wales's north. The Prime Minister yesterday announced an extra 2 weeks support for people in the Lismore area who have lost their homes of $1,000 per adult and $400 per child per week. But while people in Lismore and 2 surrounding local government areas are getting this, people in nearby flood-affected Ballina are not. This means that this assistance is going to people in the national seat of Page, held by 9.5% by Kevin Hogan after a 7% swing at the last election, but not to the seat of Richmond, held by Labor's Justine Elliot. Ludicrously, according to Justine Elliot on radio this morning, there are parts of Ballina eligible for assistance in the seat of Page, but not parts of Ballina in her electorate.
We are incredibly angry at the Prime Minister and also the state government for their lack of planning up here in terms of emergency management, for their failure to act and for their failure to actually provide the support that we need. And it was a real kick in the guts yesterday when we heard him announce an extension of those disaster payments to some areas, and we were completely excluded. The Tweed, Byron and Ballina shires were deliberately excluded from that. And these people are really suffering and were devastated when we weren't part of that announcement yesterday.
Now, government sources point out to me the need for this is assessed through an independent process and point out that areas of Ballina and southeastern Queensland which have been flooded are eligible for Category D payments and a whole range of grants for small businesses and primary producers worth $50,000 to $75,000. The argument is that Lismore is completely destroyed, and the alternative to just singling Lismore out is to hand this sort of assistance, to every flood zone regardless of the severity of the event. This was the argument Home Affairs Minister Karen Andrews had to mount on First Edition this morning.
Right, but on the question of fairness, have those in Ballina, Byron and Tweed been dudded?
Well, I think that we have to take advice as a government. Every government has to take advice from its agencies about the areas that are most significantly hit and that need additional support. Now, that's not to say that other communities haven't been affected, because we know for a fact that they have been, and support has gone into those areas. But we do need to take the advice from the likes of Emergency Management Australia and other agencies about where we need to provide immediate support and to get in there and support those communities. We are also continuing to support many, many other communities around Australia, and we will continue to do that.
But politically, 2 months before an election, it's the sort of call which can put a spotlight on the government and the adequacy and empathy of its response. Deputy Prime Minister Barnaby Joyce was quizzed on this last night.
I don't think for 1 second there's some form of parochialism where payments are being withheld from places because of the way the electorate votes.
Assessments will continue to be made, and indications are there will likely be a change of heart by the federal government in relation to this. Desperate people without homes are desperate everywhere, after all. Scott Morrison was meeting flood-hit punters in Brisbane today. After controversy over him ducking a street walk in Lismore yesterday, he will do the same in Gympie this afternoon. Opposition leader Anthony Albanese to fly into Ballina tonight to meet with the Mayor and do street walks in places like Lismore. Kieran, I look forward to you speaking to the Nationals member for Page, Kevin Hogan, later in the program, as well as Cabinet Minister Anne Ruston about the levels of support for floods victims.